Chapter 17. Places in the New Testament, especially Romans 13, for punishing of false teachers vindicated. Argument 11. Those who are powers ordained of God and a terror not to good works, but to evil, the ministers of God for good, are revengers and to execute wrath on evildoers, are kings and supreme, or governors sent by the king for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well, are to punish all false teachers, and such as ruin the souls of others, and waste the church. But the king and all lawful rulers, parliaments, or others are such, Romans 13, verses 1 through 6, 1 Peter 2, verses 13 and 14, Titus 3, verse 1, Matthew 22, verse 21, and false teachers are evil workers, evildoers, dogs, Philippians 3, verse 2. They rub the contagion of their evil deeds upon others, for those that receive them into their houses and bid them Godspeed are partakers of their evil deeds, 2 John, verses 10 and 11. Then must such teachers be evildoers. They subvert whole houses. Diverse answers to little purpose are given to this argument. As, number 1, it is against the wisdom of God in governing the world to make magistrates judges of what is true and heresy, since the generality of magistrates, yea, of men, are ignorant thereof, and incapable in questions of doubtful disputation. Second, say that the synod were equally divided, whether presbytery or independence be the way of God. Or say the major part, which is ever the worst, determine amiss. What shall the magistrate do? And the evildoer. Romans 13. Can be he that doeth evil without limitation, or thinks evil, but pro subjecta materia? But he that doth evil, whereof ordinary magistrates, heathen or Christian, are competent judges, which is manifestly of political consideration, as that which is contrary to the light and law of nature, as whoredom, adultery, murder, theft, injustice, sedition, treason. Answer number 1. This argument is against the wisdom of God in appointing magistracy, as well as against us, for there be a world of questions of doubtful disputation. What is according, or what is contrary to the light and law of nature, in murder, medicine, usury, polygamy, incest, marriage, contracts, false witness? And these are so controverted, yea, and there be matters too hard in judgment for ordinary men, between blood and blood, plea and plea, stroke and stroke, Deuteronomy 17, verse 12. No less than in matters of religion, and to err in taking the life of a guiltless man in any subject is as great misgovernment as can be, though I dare not charge God with it, as the objector doth. Number 2, when the Holy Ghost forbiddeth the master of every Christian family, and there must be a far larger number of heads of families than Christian magistrates, to own a heretic as a guest, or to salute him, 2 John 10, and commandeth Christians not to eat with an idolater, 1 Corinthians 7, verse 11, to reject an heretic, Titus 3:10, to avoid false teachers that creep into houses, 2 Timothy 3, verses 5 and 6, and such as cause divisions contrary to the doctrine of the gospel, Romans 16, verses 17 and 18. Sure he supposeth they have knowledge to judge what is error and heresy, what is truth. Otherwise he commands us to turn our backs on such as the blind man casts his club. May not one say, this is against the wisdom of God in the government of Christian families and societies, to interpose our judgment in doubtsome disputations, to judge who is the heretic, and to be avoided who is the sound believer? Number 3, the incapability of magistrates and most men to judge here is the want of infallibility, such as the immediately inspired prophets had. Then it's again the wisdom of God that we try the spirits and doctrines, and believe them. For if the generality of men, let alone Christian magistrates, be incapable of fundamental truths, they cannot judge them to be truths, nor heresies, except they be infallibly and immediately inspired by this argument. It is then against the wisdom of God to bid any believe the gospel, but the prophets and apostles. Number 4, the magistrate being a Christian should see with his own eyes and judge the presbytery worthy of his politic sanction, and those synods divide or err. The error and uncertainties of men that are accidental to all ordinances are no rule to magistrates on earth, and by this reason, which hath as much force against preaching the gospel as against the Christian magistrates' political judging, when ministers are divided, and the equal half or the major part preach Arianism, Socinianism, familism, etc., and the lesser number sound doctrine, The objector needs not ask under which of their shadows shall the magistrate repose for peace and safety. I enlarge the question, and let the objector answer. Under which of their shadows shall all their hearers repose for faith and establishment in the truth? And I answer, call no man rabbi. Let magistrates and others receive the truth in love, and let him answer, when 400 prophets say to Ahab, Go to Ramoth Gilead, fight and prosper, and one, Micaiah, saith, Go not, lest thou be killed. Under which shall Ahab repose? Shall then Ahab hear the voice of the Lord and no prophet, because 400 speak lies? Or shall not 400 Micaiahs declare the mind of God to the prince, because so many false prophets speak to the contrary? Number 5. It is true, ill-doers here must be such as magistrates generally may judge, but not all ill-doers, false prophets, or the like, magistrates as magistrates, are to judge ill-doers. But it follows not that all magistrates, whether heathen or Christian, are to judge all ill-doers, whether gospel-seducing teachers or murderers, for there wanteth a condition in heathen magistrates. For the want whereof they cannot actually and in the capacity of heathens judge false teachers, Arians, Socinians, and the like, not because they are not essentially magistrates as well as Christian magistrates, but because they want the knowledge of the gospel, even as inferior judges are as essentially judges in Israel as the priests and the great Sanhedrin at Jerusalem, and may judge of their office between blood and blood. But if it be a controversy too hard for them between blood and blood, and the party be willing to appeal, these inferior judges cannot actually judge that controversy, but it must go to the Sanhedrin, Deuteronomy 17, verses 12 and 13. So a father as a father, whether heathen or Christian, and a master of a family by his place, the like, I say, of a husband, a tutor, a doctor in their respective places, are by their place and relation to teach their children and servants the principles of the doctrine of the gospel. By these places, Genesis 18, verses 18 and 19, Exodus 12, verses 26 and 27, Psalm 78, verses 4 through 7, Joel 1, verse 2, Proverbs 4, verses 3 through 5, Ephesians 6, verse 4, 2 Timothy 3, verses 14 and 15, and Deuteronomy 6, verses 6 and 7. Yet while they are heathen fathers and heathen masters, they neither can nor are obliged actually to teach anything of the gospel, that they, never hearing of the gospel, are obliged not to believe in a Christ of whom they never heard, Romans 10, verses 14 and 15 and 16. And those that Christ was never preached to are not condemned for gospel unbelief, John 15, verse 12. But for sins against the law of nature, Romans 2, verses 12, 13, 14, and 15, as well as Romans 1, verses 19 through 22. And the like must we say of judges, whether heathen or Christian, though in the state of heathenish, they never having heard of Christ, freeth them from an obligation of actual punishing gospel heretics, yet as judges their office is to punish such. But neither heathen princes, nor heathen fathers, masters, husbands, tutors, and teachers of schools are obliged to an actual exercise of all and every magistratical, fatherly, masterly, marital, and tutory gospel duties toward their underlings and pupils, if they live in a country where they are invincibly ignorant of the gospel, if the Lord by no providence send preachers of the gospel to them. And how shall they believe in him of whom they never heard? And how shall they judge heretics, sinning against a gospel of which they never heard? Let no man stumble at this providence. God hath made the supreme magistrate judge of all murderers. Yet may this godly prince, and the generality of men, be ignorant, yea, incapable, at least most unfit to judge how a bloody physician took away the life of such a child by this vegetable or this herb or this syrup, to the end his own son might be heir. Dare we say with this objector, therefore this providence is appointing such a godly prince to be judge of murder, because he is not a skilled physician, is inconsistent with the wisdom and goodness of God in the government of the world. The like instances I may give in thousands of the like cases, in which the Christian judge may be ignorant, and I cannot dissemble. But it is a hard question how the magistrate as a magistrate doth punish gospel heretics, for so all magistrates, even heathen magistrates, who are invincibly ignorant of the gospel, in regard they never heard of the gospel, should be obliged to punish false teachers and gospel heretics, which seems hard, for it is a sin against the magistratical duty of an Indian magistrate not to punish gospel heretics. Answer. It follows not, for nothing follows, but it is a sin in an Indian prince, and he sinneth against his magistratical office, in that he punisheth not an Indian false teacher, who teacheth against the law of nature, because an Indian should not worship the devil. But the Indian ruler, invincibly ignorant of the gospel, sinneth not against his office as a magistrate, because he punisheth not a gospel heretic. For he is not obliged to every magistratical act as a magistrate, not to those of which he is invincibly and faultlessly ignorant, as an Indian husband and master, invincibly ignorant of the gospel's sins, not against the duty of a husband and head of a family, though he teach not wife, children, and servants the principles of the gospel, which a Christian husband and head of a family is obliged to do, not as a husband and head of a family simply, but as such a husband and head as heareth the gospel, and so either heareth and knoweth, or may hear these gospel principles, if he were not thereof ignorant, through his own sinful neglect. Objection. But the magistrate as the magistrate punisheth gospel heretics, ergo all magistrates, even heathen magistrates, fail against their magistratical duty, if they punish not gospel heretics, and their ignorance cannot excuse them. Answer. The antecedent is not simply true. Every magistrate as a magistrate sinneth against his office, if he punish not some false teachers, if convened before him and convinced. But every magistrate as a magistrate punisheth not every heretic against the gospel, but only such a magistrate as heareth the gospel punisheth such a gospel heretic. We say that magistrates by virtue of their office make laws for no transporting of moneys out of England, but you cannot infer that if magistrates did this by their magistratical power, then magistrates as magistrates, and so all magistrates of India, and all heathen magistrates, ought to make laws that no money be transported out of England. It is no consequent at all, for though English magistrates make such laws by their magistratical power, yet they do this as such magistrates, not as magistrates. Thousands such we may allege.